They mentioned you'd be showing up today. You're the new one, huh? That's fine. We've all started somewhere. Call me Jim. I've been diving for 27 years, though some days it feels like a lifetime. My knees creak when I bend down. My left ear hasn't quite been the same since the accident, and I carry the smell of rust, even when I'm bone dry. Here's the thing. You don't make it in this job unless you pick up fast or get lucky. Sometimes both. You don't survive unless you master the art of staying alive. You've probably already spotted the equipment in the hangar. The racks of suits, tanks lined up like soldiers standing at attention, the dry suits hanging like empty shells. They all look impressive, maybe even noble. Rescue diver. Sounds heroic, right? Let me tell you something early on. The water doesn't care who you are. It doesn't matter if you're rescuing a child trapped in a bus or recovering a briefcase an official once lost. The water will swallow you whole if you're not careful. I began with search and rescue. That was back when I still had the guts for making split-second decisions. Lakes, floods, broken ice, situations with victims. You might think it's the hardest job, pulling up bodies that aren't breathing, but it made sense. It was real work. Someone's gone. You dive in. You bring them back. You provide answers to someone, but time passes and you age. Your reflexes slow. The younger generation gets quicker. Soon enough, you stop getting the first call, and instead, you're asked for help with odd jobs. So, I switched to salvage, private contracts, calls from companies, occasionally for insurance, sunken boats, lost freight, that kind of thing. Sometimes it was hush-hush government work, the kind of things that weren't supposed to exist. You learn to never ask why. You learn to stay silent. And before long, you become the guy they turn to when everything else makes no sense. Not because you're some genius, but because you've been down there enough times to tell the difference between what's normal and what's off. They don't send fresh recruits to these kinds of calls. That's why I'm talking to you first. Training. Sure. But there's more. You need to know the backstories before you even dip your face below the surface. But I know, I'm rushing ahead. I always do when I start talking too much. The stories can wait. Let's start with the company. Let's begin with what you've actually signed up for. We work under civilian contracts, but most of our identities are unknown to the public. No press releases with our name on them. You won't find our name on any trucks. We don't even have a logo on our wetsuits. We get our assignments through hidden channels, clotheslines, sealed envelopes, encrypted messages. Some come from the military, others from insurance companies who'd prefer to avoid paying out. Some come from shadowy figures with expensive watches and no surnames. What they need is someone to go down there and retrieve something. Divers are sent with the clear understanding that they're not there to figure anything out. Just bring it back. No analysis, no theories, just grab it, tag it, surface. Doesn't matter what it is, a capsule, a crate, a drone, a body, a hatch that shouldn't be where it is. You mark it, take a photo, leave it until the lift team arrives, and don't talk about it later, even if it haunts you when your eyes close. The company takes privacy seriously. If you're the kind of person who enjoys posting stuff, please don't. Pictures, stories, videos. You'll need to unlearn that. We don't talk to the press. We don't write books. We don't do interviews. We don't have Instagram. All right? There's a non-disclosure agreement in the hiring packet, and it lasts a lifetime. Most divers sign it without even reading the small print. And buried in that legalese is one line. The company is not responsible for exposure to content of non-empirical origin. It's not a mistake. It's been there longer than I have. Don't ask me what it means. Don't ask anyone. If someone's been at this job long enough to have thoughts on that line, they don't want to share them. The pay is outstanding. You'll realize that pretty quickly. It'll hit your account fast in clean numbers. No deductions you don't recognize, no delays, full medical, great benefits. You'll think you've landed the best job you could ever ask for. The gear's top tier. Every diver gets a brand new kit every 6 months. You'll wear equipment designed to withstand depths and pressures most civilians will never encounter. You'll use trackers, comms, and imaging tools that aren't available to the public. It's all real. It all works. They don't cut corners. That part's true. But you'll also notice something else, though not right away. Turnover, it's high. It's never announced. No one gets fired. Not really. People just stop showing up. You'll hear about someone transferring. You'll hear their name once, then never again. You'll find a locker that's been untouched for weeks, boots inside still lined up as if they're waiting. Sometimes the crew will quietly mention it. He tapped out, or she moved on. That's all they'll say. That's all they ever say. And that's probably enough for now. You're still new, still dry. You'll learn more once you've had a few dives. The right stories always find their way to you. They always do. But I've got a few for you already, actually. The kinds of things that get passed down. You don't have to believe me. Hell, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But for your own safety, you better listen anyway. These aren't just stories around a campfire. They're records, field notes, fragments of something bigger that no one wants to officially talk about. I'm giving them to you now before you get too deep. So when it's your turn down there, you don't freeze trying to make sense of it, because you won't, and you don't have to. You just need to know what to look for. I'll start with one that I think about more than I should. The rookies like to call it the Angel Dive, though that name never sat well with me. There was nothing divine about that place. The job came through a third-party carrier. We weren't told who flagged the site, just that there was a priority wreck along the coast. Private vessel, registered under a shell company, coordinates pinned to a sheer cliffside that had collapsed during a recent storm. Half the rock face had fallen into the water, pulling with it some old structures that weren't on any official chart. The sonar sweep showed something unusual. A void under the rubble. Empty space where there shouldn't have been any. Looked like the land had been hollow beneath. Now, that's not uncommon. Limestone does that, especially near saltwater. You get caverns forming over time, but this one was much bigger than usual, long, deep. They sent us to explore it. Myself, 2 others, and I won't name them. They didn't stick around long after this one, and I don't think they'd want it brought up now. We made our descent just after dawn. The water was calm. Visibility was better than expected. We moved slowly, clearing rock fragments, marking paths with lines as we pushed forward. The cavern entrance had cracked open from the cliff like a broken mouth. Sharp edges, collapsed ledges, chunks of earth that still looked like they might slide again if you touched the wrong piece. We got about 30 meters in when we found the first one. It was a figure, human-shaped, standing in the middle of a narrow ledge. arms up, face half covered, like it flinched just before something hit it. We stopped moving the second we saw it. At first, we thought it might be part of the cave, like a trick of the light or maybe some stalagmite formation built over time around a frame. That kind of thing happens underwater, but as we got closer, we could see the detail. The way the fingers were curled, the lines of a mouth barely peeking through the cracks between the knuckles. It wasn't just shaped like a person, it was a person, or something meant to look exactly like one. A few more meters in, we found another, then a dozen more. They were everywhere, tucked into crevices, standing against the walls, crouched near the floor. Figures all made of the same pale stone or mineral, or maybe something else entirely. Every one of them was unique. Different posture, different face, different moment, and none of them looked peaceful. One was on top of another, hands locked around the throat. Another had their arms wrapped around someone else's shoulders, the two of them frozen in a tight embrace. One had a weapon, looked like a blade, caught mid-swing as if time had just stopped an inch from an impact. One figure knelt on the cave floor with their face lifted upward, mouth wide, frozen in what looked like some kind of scream. You couldn't look at them all at once. There was too much to take in. We didn't know what the hell we were looking at. We kept our mouths shut down there. Of course, no talking at depth, but the cameras were feeding live back to the surface, and someone topside made a comment over the earpiece, said it looked like something out of Doctor Who. Those stone creatures that only moved when you weren't watching. The Weeping Angels, I remember that show, the older version anyway, back when it ran in the 70s. The joke caught on, and before we were even back on the boat, people were calling them the Angels. They didn't really fit the name, though. They weren't all hiding their faces, and they sure as hell didn't feel like anything divine. They looked more like the statues you'd find outside a church that had been burned down and never rebuilt. After we got back to the surface, I couldn't let it go. I started digging around quietly, on my own time. No specifics, nothing that would break contract. Just reading. Old logs, shipping records, sailors' journals, anything that mentioned strange rock formations near the coast. It took a while, but I found something. A passage in a Dutch ship captain's log from the 1600s. His vessel had wrecked after a storm, not far from the same stretch of cliff. He wrote about hiding in a sea cave during the worst of it and what he saw inside. Figures, he said, stone people, dozens of them. He called them the Still Ones. He wrote that they were sailors trapped after death. Not just any sailors, ones who had fought or betrayed each other or left something undone. People who had died with something unfinished. Rage, grief, love, regret. Whatever it was, it held on to them. And the legend, if you believe it, says that the sea takes them. Not just their bodies, but everything left in them that hadn't settled. The cave becomes a kind of purgatory, I guess, a holding place. And when the storms grow fierce enough, the earth cracks open and lets you glimpse what's been lying beneath. The recovery team arrived a few days later. We were told to stand down. They were supposed to clear the area, gather samples, and assess what could be safely removed, but nothing was ever taken. Equipment kept malfunctioning. Reports came back corrupted. Divers rotated off the job with no explanation. One of them supposedly said the statues had shifted positions between dives, but official scans showed no movement. Just poor footage, they said. Compression issues. In the end, the company sealed off the whole site. Quietly, they dropped rubble back into the cave from above, reburied it, and acted as if it had never been disturbed. No record, no follow-up. As if you'd ever see them on your dives. Those figures, don't go near them. Don't touch them. Don't take pictures. Don't try counting how many there are or linger for too long. Just mark the spot and leave quickly. Something's wrong with that place, deeply wrong. I don't know what those figures are, or how they ended up there, or why they look like they do. I just know they don't belong, not naturally. And if you have even a shred of common sense, you'll keep your distance. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Then there are jobs that have nothing to do with legends. Just people, real ones, the kind that do worse things than the sea ever could. We were told it was a standard recovery, dead male, early 30s, found floating near the edge of a restricted dock zone in a southern inlet. Shallow water, low current. The body was wedged between two pylons where debris typically gathers. At first, it looked like the usual, a drowning. Maybe someone slipped off a boat and wasn't found in time. It was supposed to be quick. Get in, bag the body, mark the location, bring it up, hand it over. We'd done it 100 times. The guy wasn't in bad shape, considering the heat. A few days in the water, maybe a week. Skin was bloated, eyes cloudy. The body didn't show any clear signs of injury from what we could observe through the dry suit window. He was dressed simply, cargo pants and a dark shirt, no wallet or identification. Everything appeared standard, except for the hands. You become accustomed to the strange positions bodies can take in this job. They float oddly, joints stiffen, limbs bend in ways that don't make sense. So at first, the hands didn't seem particularly unusual. They were just a bit off. Maybe it was their size, or perhaps it was the color. They were lighter than the rest of the skin, like they hadn't been exposed to water as long. Once we got him on the boat, we tried scanning the fingerprints. It's common practice to run prints right away. We had a mobile scanner directly linked to the lab, flagging anything in their database. It's not flawless, but it typically gives us a lead. This time, it just wouldn't work. Partial match, no match, retry again. Nothing. We tried the other hand and got the same result. That's when one of the technicians noticed a line near the wrist. It wasn't a wound, more like a seam. We pulled back the cuff and saw zip ties, tight, 3 per wrist, buried under the sleeve. Under that, epoxy, thick, gray, hardened, like someone had been patching drywall. It wasn't even hidden. Whoever had done this used construction adhesive and cheap plastic ties to bind the hands in place. These weren't his hands. His real hands had been removed. The ones attached to him were taken from someone else. We tagged the seam, collected samples, and filed the report. It was forwarded to the local authorities under possible foul play, though technically it wasn't our case. Once we pass it on, we're usually out of the loop. The lab confirmed that the cuts at the wrist had been made post-mortem. No blood, no response to injury. Whoever he was, he had been dead before his hands were swapped. The police never followed up with us, not officially. But a few months later, reports began surfacing from Texas and Louisiana. Fragments of bodies were found in lakes, shallow water channels, limbs with mismatched DNA, heads missing. In one instance, a torso was discovered with two different sets of fingerprints. The media dubbed the culprit Frankenstein, not because of any medical procedure or stitching, but the way he mixed and matched the pieces. There was no clear connection between the victims. No age range, no gender preference. Some were already missing persons. Others had no records to speak of. The only thing linking them was the way they were found, always in water, always dismantled and reassembled, never buried. We didn't stop with that first body. Over the next 5 months, I pulled 2 more. One was found tangled in a canal near Baton Rouge. Another was caught in a fishing net off the Gulf. Same method, same epoxy, same zip ties, same mismatched parts. Both were discarded in places where only divers would ever stumble upon them, and both had prints that didn't match their wrists. This time, I didn't just pass the case off. I got drawn into the investigation, worked directly with a homicide unit in Louisiana. They had been tracking disjointed remains across multiple states. But it wasn't until we started pulling whole bodies with consistent post-mortem modifications that the pattern emerged. The killer had a method, just not one anyone had recognized. He had a preference for water, rivers, marinas, cargo docks, anywhere currents could wash away skin cells and blur the time of death. Every body had something swapped: hands, feet, once part of a jaw, not to hide the victims but to mark them. Eventually, we caught him. His name was Gordon Ellis, 38, freelance mechanical engineer, quiet, traveled for contract work, boat license, no criminal record, clean enough not to raise suspicion. They arrested him at a service yard. Inside a dry-docked trawler, he'd turned it into a mobile workspace. They found gloves, tools, and samples in a chemical storage area. The epoxy matched residue from our recoveries. So did the zip ties. So did the bone saw. Even the grind pattern on the blade. He's locked up now. Somewhere they don't let him near water. And the first victim we pulled up, the one with the mismatched hands, was finally identified. His name was Thomas, 29, missing for nearly a year. At least now someone knows what happened to him. This job is never glamorous. You get things like this sometimes. Bodies, deaths that weren't accidents, scenes you'd rather not revisit. You see the worst of what people can do to each other. You see what happens when there's no one to stop it. But the point of this work isn't just to recover the wreckage. It's to give someone on land the missing link. A body with the wrong hands might help connect the dots. A marked location might fit another case. That stuff matters, even if it feels insignificant at the time. It's not glamorous work. Most of the time it's slow, quiet, and thankless. But it's solid, and that matters. Some places won't even let him near the shoreline. And that man we pulled up on day 1, the one with the wrong hands, finally got reclassified from unknown to confirmed. His name was Thomas, age 29, missing nearly a year. At least now someone knows his final stop. This job's no fairy tale. You deal with things like that. Corpses, deaths that weren't accidents, scenes you'll want to erase from memory. You'll witness the darkest acts humans can commit. You'll see what happens when no one's there to stop the worst. But the point isn't just salvaging wrecks. It's giving someone on shore the missing piece. A body with the wrong hands might unlock something. A marked location might sync with someone else's file. That kind of thing counts. Even when it feels small, it's not glamorous. Mostly it's slow, quiet, and goes unnoticed. But it's real, and that counts. Because when we nail it, when we find what no one else could, when we bring up what someone topside needs, we offer closure. We shut doors that stayed open far too long. We help the right people fit the puzzle. That's what this job means. Not legends, not secrets, just people. Most rookies like you don't see that first. They're chasing rushes, but they learn, one dive at a time. You'll hear insane stories in this field, but the strangest ones don't come from gossip. They come from logs, like one that crossed our desk last winter. A Soviet diesel-electric sub from the Cold War vanished in 1973. Its last message came early January 12th. Routine, navigation coordinates, no mayday, no red flags. It disappeared 200 miles off course during drills. Never surfaced again. Never pinged again. They figured it was gear failure or pressure implosion. That era's subs went down often. The sea swallows fast. For 50 years, there was no sign of it. Then, out of nowhere, it reappeared. Just like that. A routine sonar sweep by a NATO team mapping the area caught its signal on a lead shelf. Full hull signature, no fractures, no disassembly, no spreading, entire, perfectly intact. It sat upright on the ocean floor as if it had parked itself there and waited all these years. The coordinates matched the submarine's last known location from 1973. We were brought in to inspect. The briefing was brief but clear. No evidence of a collision. No visible pressure damage. The paint? Still original. Spectral analysis confirmed it. The external lights were still working. The submarine's exterior looked like it had been placed there last week, not 50 years ago. No barnacles, no rust, nothing. Just dust. That was the first warning sign. Even in deep water with cold temperatures and little current, metal doesn't remain perfect, especially on a submarine subjected to decades of pressure, salinity, and pitch-black conditions. But this one, no sign of age, no chemical erosion, no corrosion, no discoloration. The welds looked freshly done, like they'd been sealed that same month. It wasn't preserved. It was untouched. We boarded from the starboard side, entering through the upper hatch. The lock clicked open as if it had been freshly oiled. Inside, the air was still stagnant. Emergency lights flickered to life as our movements triggered sensors. Everything worked. The consoles lit up. Backup systems kicked in. The internal climate? Stable. No trace of the crew. Every bunk was neatly made. Every locker was closed. Tools hung in their racks. Dishes were stacked neatly in the mess hall. No cracks, no algae, no water damage. And, even more astonishing, nothing was broken. No collapsed walls. No signs of evacuation. No signs of decompression. Nothing. It was as if they just stepped away for a break. The most bizarre detail was the clock system. Every Cold War submarine was equipped with a synchronized network of shipboard clocks, military-grade timing circuits embedded into the navigation logs, engine cycles, and communication systems. These subs were built for precision. Every action was marked by a timestamp. And those clocks? They were still running, every single one of them. From the bridge to the engine room, they all froze at 12:44 a.m. on January 12, 1973. Not burnt out, not degraded, simply frozen. The logs told another story. We pulled the hard copy books from the bridge, sealed tight. Handwritten entries, daily notes. The final entry was routine, position data, weather updates, watch notes. It lined up perfectly with the timestamp. But then someone had kept writing after the clock stopped. 7 more hours of entries. No digital backup, no mention of strange occurrences or panic, just regular notes on power levels, duty rotations, sonar sweeps, ordinary things, as if they hadn't noticed the ship had become trapped in time. Then it stopped. No final words, no goodbye, no trace of the crew. 47 men and officers, not a single one left behind. No signs of ejection, no escape pod used, no recorded drop in oxygen. Their uniforms were neatly folded in lockers, boots aligned under the bunks. Everything was exactly where it should be, except for the people. We ran full diagnostics, heat scans, subsurface radar, electromagnetic sweeps. No anomalies, no radiation, no signs of tampering or sabotage. All records matched what the original Soviet reports had stated in 1973. Except for one thing, the sub's ID tag, etched into the inner hull, didn't match the original serial number. It was 2 digits off. A 32 where there should have been a 07. We sent that up the chain. The response came quickly. Log it, tag it, seal it. The site was classified, and the team was pulled within 24 hours. Recovery was ruled out. No samples allowed off the vessel. It was marked as historic wreckage. Preservation was advised. That's the polite way of saying, just leave it alone. Don't question it. Don't go back. I don't think anyone's been back since. It's still down there, completely intact. Sitting on that ledge, waiting. The lights are still on, the table still set, like the dive never ended. There's no damage, no clue how it got there, no answers about where the crew went, and no way to explain what happened in those 7 hours between when the clock stopped ticking and when the last person made an entry. And like so many of the jobs we take on, there's no follow-up. Just a gap. No one has explained how a Cold War submarine, fully intact, could vanish without a trace for 50 years, only to return in perfect condition with its lights still on. That's the part that stays with you. Not just the disappearance, but the timing. That sub went missing at 12:44 a.m. All internal systems stopped recording data at that exact moment. Yet the crew kept logging entries for 7 hours, which means either the clocks were wrong or something happened that the system didn't capture. Something that took out 47 trained sailors without leaving a single mark. No wreckage, no flooding, no bodies. Just silence. And then nothing. There are more stories like this than most people care to admit. Unsolved mysteries, strange wrecks, empty ships, instruments that stop working as you dive past a certain depth. Divers who come back changed, or don't come back at all. These stories don't make the headlines, and they don't make it into training manuals. They get shared the same way I'm sharing them with you now. I'm not one for superstition. I don't talk about curses, fate, or ancient forces lurking deep. I trust data. I believe in evidence. But I've been doing this long enough to know there's a limit to what we can measure. And beyond that line, all you have is what you've seen. You need to listen when someone with experience tells you about something strange they encountered. Pay attention, not because every story is fact, like something from a lab test, but because each story teaches you how to notice what doesn't belong. And knowing what doesn't belong, that's how you stay alive. That's why I'm telling you these stories. Not to entertain you, not to scare you, but because this is what the job is. It's not all about the gear, skill, and the protocol you find in textbooks. Some of it is about memory, about understanding what happened to those who came before you and why they made the decisions they did. That's how we used to pass things on before manuals were everywhere. The ones who'd faced the worst would sit you down and tell you what they had encountered. Not everything had a neat explanation, but everything had meaning. Every story carries a lesson. That's what matters. And this one reminds you that not all disappearances are just accidents. Some are something far more. So here's the rule. When something looks too perfect, too untouched, too clean, pay attention. If a wreck has been missing for 50 years and surfaces with working lines, don't treat it like any other sub. Slow down. Ask yourself, why? Mark your time and double-check your exits. Because nothing stays untouched for that long by chance, and nothing stays hidden that deep, unless it's meant to. Now, you think that was the strangest recovery I'd ever been part of. It wasn't. We got the call from a small port along Brazil's southeastern coast. Recovery request, no name body, shallow depth, 80 feet. Local authorities had flagged it, but lacked the equipment to retrieve it cleanly. We were contracted in. The water there is murky, greenish, thick with silt, stirred by tides and river runoff. Visibility is poor, even on a good day. You don't see the bottom until you're almost on top of it. That coast is a graveyard of old chains, scrap, anchors, and half-buried steel from ships sunk over the years, most rotted away since the 80s and 90s. You learn not to grab anything too hastily. We dropped in slowly and followed the line coordinates down. The sonar picked up a dense metal signature, anchor chain, leading off from a collapsed hull nearby. The wreck was in the records. A freighter sank in 1994 after a fire in the engine room. 37 crew, all accounted for. No missing passengers. No recovery attempts had ever been made. The cargo wasn't worth the hassle. The body was found 20 feet off the stern, tied to the anchor chain with 2 thick wraps around the ankles. The rope had fused to the calcified surface of the leg bones, hardened over time. He wasn't floating. He was suspended just above the seabed, his back leaning against the chain as if he'd been placed there. No movement, no breakage, no visible trauma. He was wearing a tuxedo, black jacket, the tie still tightly knotted, his shirt faded to a pale gray from the water. The fabric should have disintegrated years ago in that harsh environment, but it hadn't. It was stiff, discolored, but still intact. The skin was hard, smooth, gray-white, calcified like coral. No signs of bloating, no loss of soft tissue. The face was fully preserved. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was filled with sea glass, mostly green and brown, the kind worn down by the waves. Dozens of pieces tightly packed behind his teeth, like someone had shoved a fistful in and forced his jaw shut afterward. But there was no damage to the jawline, no pressure break. The mouth had been open when it happened, or it had remained that way. The body was neutral in the water, neither sinking nor rising. Still, we tagged it, surfaced, and brought him up the next day in a sealed case. The local coroner was called, but they had no match in their database, no dental records, no ID in any missing persons log, either domestic or foreign, no documents in his pocket, no tattoos, nothing. We tried everything to find a name, searched regional wedding registries from the past 30 years, checked for any men listed as lost at sea during wedding season, searched the freighter manifest, thinking maybe someone had boarded unofficially no match. No one ever came forward. We had a body, a suit, a date, and nothing else. While we were still on site, one of the locals, an older dock worker, mentioned something he had heard as a child. He said, "They call him the groom of the bay." He said it like it was nothing out of the ordinary, like everyone knew. He told us an old story passed down in those towns. Parents would share it with young couples before their wedding day. More of a warning than a scary story. If you went into the water before your wedding, usually alone, and saw a man waist deep in the surf, hands folded, eyes wide open, it meant your wedding would never happen. The groom would vanish, or the bride would walk away. Sometimes there'd be a storm, sometimes worse. They said if you saw him, the marriage was already doomed even before it began. So, couples were told to stay away from the shore before the ceremony. Superstition mostly, like walking under a ladder or wearing the wrong color. But people still followed it, even now. Local wedding planners included in their schedules. No beach access, no dock photos, just in case. When we told them what we had found, the tuxedo, the anchor, the sea glass, they didn't even flinch. Some of them nodded. They said, "Well, that matches the old stories." They said the man had no name, that he was either cursed or betrayed, depending on who you asked. Some said he drowned himself after being left at the altar. Others said he was murdered by a jealous family. The only constant was the water, the tuxedo, and the open eyes. One version even mentioned the glass. They said it filled his mouth so he couldn't call out. That part stuck with me. Now, normally, I'd dismiss it. Folklore fills in the blanks when facts can't. But this wasn't just some blurry sighting or a shadow caught on camera. This was a full body in normal wear, preserved beyond reason, chained to a wreck from a ship that had no record of him, with no explanation for why he looked like he'd been placed there instead of being lost. There was no missing person, no crime report, no clue how long he'd been down there. He didn't match anything, but the anchor did. Same metal, same part number as the 1994 wreck. No question. Which means he either went down with the ship and was somehow never listed, or he was placed there afterward using salvaged chain. But the body hadn't aged like something from 1994. It hadn't aged at all. Well, we handed it over, filed our report, and moved on. No ID, no prints, no personal effects, no official record to match him to. The body was marked as an unidentifiable male, presumed historical. The file closed within a few weeks. Just another anomaly, boxed up and pushed aside. But while I still think about the way he looked, neither panicked nor peaceful, just still, like he had been waiting down there for someone to find him. So here's what I'll tell you. When you're working in unfamiliar places, listen to the locals. Not everything they say is superstition. Some stories are just for entertainment, sure, but some are warnings. Important ones. Passed down because people saw something once and decided it was better to remember than to forget. Figure out which is which and take the right one seriously, just in case. Well, that's all I've got for now. You've heard the stories, at least the ones I think you're ready for. There are more, a lot more, some stranger than you'd ever believe, some much darker. But those can wait. You haven't been down long enough yet. These stories, they're just the surface, like the water, calm and still from above, but hiding everything beneath. You can listen to me all day. Yeah, maybe it helps, but it's not the same as experiencing it yourself. Feeling that weight. hearing only your breath, finding something on the floor no one expected. That's when it starts to change you. I'm not telling you these stories to scare you, okay? I'm not trying to make a mystery out of things I don't get. I'm just giving you the stuff the manuals don't cover. The kind the old divers pass down to the new ones. And like I said before, every story has its lesson. Some of those lessons might save your life. But don't forget, this job isn't about stories. It's about doing, diving, recovering what others can't reach, not because it's easy, not because it always makes sense, but because you can. That's the only real reason we're down there. We're trained, we stay calm, and when things get strange, we don't lose our heads. We surface when it's time, and we stay silent when the job demands it. You'll earn your own story soon enough. Until then, keep your head clear, your gear spotless, and your lines tight. Now enough talking. Suit up. We've got work to do. Hey, Stephen here. I hope you enjoyed this story. I love these ocean tales, always have. Something about them. If you want to support us more, check out our old videos. Thanks for listening to tonight's story, and I hope you have a great night.